Jason Aldean, Full Throttle Tour 2025, powered by Patriot Mobile. When the lights come on. Friday, September 19th, Wells Fargo Arena. With Nate Smith. You set my world on fire. And Ray Lynn. Jason Aldean. On sale now at iowaeventcenter.com. Jason Aldean Live.
We recommend listening to the CW Pod with a glass of Steeple Ridge Bourbon. Grown, distilled, well-rested, and bottled in Erling, Iowa. Now from the Channel Seed Studios, this is the CW Pod, fueled by Steeple Ridge.
What up? Welcome to this week's CW Pod on Iowa Everywhere. I have a very special guest. We'll get to him in a moment. We are presented by our friends at the Lonely Oak Distillery, Steeple Ridge Bourbon. It's Daytona 500 week. That's the only Sunday in the year where I go straight to the bourbon. I'm just kidding. I won't pour it, but I will have a glass of Steeple Ridge Bourbon on Sunday during the Daytona 500. So I root for my main man, Chase Elliott, number 9, on Sunday. I do have my racing buddy, Chad Leistikow from the Des Moines Register in with me. We're going to talk today. I wanted to bring Chad in to do one. I like to bring him in because he is my racing buddy. We love NASCAR racing together. And if you read my and Chad's text thread, it's pretty much like 70% like racing, I would say, over the years. It's kind of how we became friends. And then, of course, I do, Chad, Legends listeners, phenomenal. You guys are doing a great job, you and
Thanks.
Doc. But I always will listen to the show, and then which means you have a great show, because I want to jump in and like be a part of the conversation, and I have like questions. And
anytime, man. If you want to jump in sometime, you can.
Oh, no, it's your show. You do your thing. But that's why I wanted to have you in, because I feel like whatever happens in the next 5 weeks will shape Iowa basketball for a while. Because I don't know. I spent a lot of my day yesterday because I knew I was going to have you on here, and I wanted to make sure to have like full context of everything going on in Iowa City. Because the last thing I want to do is be the guy to just fire the coach, and I don't like being that guy, and it's always a heavy conversation when we get to this point, and you have to start you've done this longer than me, when you have to start writing about these things and all this stuff. And I was like, okay, I think Chad and I can have a really good nuanced conversation about this and understand where Iowa basketball's come from, where it could go in the future, and that we also have a new athletic director in Beth Goetz to factor in. And I don't know her. I don't know her demeanor. I know if Gary Barta was the athletic director, I don't think Iowa would make a change, because I've been around him a lot, but I don't know anything about this. So I just wanted to go a little bit deeper with Chad when it comes to all this stuff. But Iowa comes out of nowhere last night and gets a win to kind of make this thing a little bit tricky. Did you see that coming? Did that one surprise you at all, Chad?
It did surprise me, yeah. I shouldn't say that actually completely, because they played really hard. They lost to Owen Freeman for the season before the Purdue game last week. So they had a home and home against Purdue and Wisconsin before, for those that don't follow Iowa as closely. And so it was like, okay, 2 of the best teams in the Big Ten are coming to Carver. You just lost your best player. This could get ugly. Well, they were in both those games for a long time, and they just kind of faded down the stretch. So they ended up losing to both by about 9, 10, 11. But they played hard. They had a lot of effort out there. So watching the Rutgers-Iowa game last night, it was clear that Rutgers had like way more talent. I mean, like there's a potential first-round or top 3 pick, right? Ace Bailey out there against Carter Kingsbury. And, Iowa holds its own. It's just Rutgers just wasn't a team, and Iowa played like a team. And so that won out last night. Iowa wins, comes back from 11 down, wins 84-73. maybe played themselves off the Big Ten tournament bubble for the time being,
which is weird.
Yeah, because you get only 15 get in of the 18 now, and if they lost, that was a big head-to-head result. So they actually, it might be safely in as long as they don't really melt down the stretch. But that's kind of where it is right now. You're trying to just barely get into the Big Ten tournament. That's not what people thought this team would be. It's been a disappointing year for sure. But last night, I think, did give, was nice to see for those players because they've been trying really hard. We've covered them a long time. Peyton Sanford's probably one of the nicest guys we've ever covered. And
he's one of my favorite guys in the whole Fran era.
Yeah. I mean, he's
for
just
me,
like,
personally, just watching him, I enjoy watching him play.
Yeah. And he came back for his last year thinking they could do more, and they probably should have done more. They haven't been very healthy. And so it's been a real disappointing year for him. And so to see him kind of break down on BTN last night, that still means something to get those wins. It's not like this team has just given up and they're just playing out the string.
That was my takeaway from that game, is that clearly Fran has this locker room, right? Like, you start losing, and especially now when players can just transfer whenever they want, like, everybody starts talking, and so clearly he's still got the guys. I guess where does it sit as far as the appetite to make a move? Because this is what has always been so perplexing about the McCaffery era to me. On the surface, I think after Licklider, and granted that's a generation ago, most Iowa fans have been like, oh yeah, we're regularly going to tournaments. That sounds great. The problem is he hasn't had the high-end success, right? So you kind of get to that, the stale factor where it's like, oh, well, the best we can do is get to the round of 32, whatever. But I feel the appetite to make a move. So, like, his overall resume, I still feel like is probably not fireable, but you can't deny the apathy and the empty seats and all that stuff. So I'm not asking you to get in Beth Goetz's head. She clearly hasn't talked publicly about this, but what's the right way to look at this, I guess? Like, because people have to care, because if they don't care, like, that's a major problem. But because I talked to a coach yesterday, it was not TJ Otzberger or anybody at Iowa State, but it is somebody in D1 basketball yesterday. I talked to a bunch of people, and most of these coaches are like, oh, he shouldn't be fired. Mm-hmm. He's won too much. You can't fire a guy for that. That's how most of them react.
Right.
But you cannot deny all the empty seats, and you see them all the time there. So, like, I don't know, where do you draw the line when it comes to this?
Let's start with Beth Goetz, because that seemed to be one of your top questions. Mm-hmm. We did talk about this on I had a one-on-one with her at the Music City Bowl, and so one of the topics that we talked about was basketball apathy. And folks can go find that, Hawk Central. Just do a Google search. It's about an hour. Obviously we didn't talk specifically about, are you going to fire Fran? Nothing like that. But it was just like, what do you do about this apathy? And she's like, yeah, we have to get our head around it. And they have been. They've interviewed a lot of season ticket holders that either dump their season tickets or aren't coming to the games. Like, there's a lot of season ticket holders that just aren't coming. And they want to know why. And, part of a couple of the surface factors have been, hey, you got a picture of Caitlin Clark there, is because women's basketball is so popular right now at Iowa that, it's not a huge town, obviously. A lot of people just don't have the time, in some cases, the resources to support both teams and be there, 3 times a week or 4, whatever it is, like to go to Carver and Park, and, they have lives, their kids have games, their kids have practices, you just can't go to all of it. And so they choose the women, and it's an understandable choice right now. So that's a factor. Another factor she did say, and I'm glad she said it, because it needs to be said, is the terrible home schedule they have. Now, I know Iowa State's really isn't a ton better at home, but because they end up with a lot of the same opponents. But, Iowa played 5 of the bottom 50 teams in Ken Palm this year at home. And that's just grotesque basketball. Nobody wants to see that. You don't want to come to watch. Like, I get it from a coach's point of view, and I've had this conversation with McCaffery on a golf cart before. Because I'm like, why don't you get scheduled better? Like he's like, their mindset as coaches is that they're already playing 20 conference games. They're already playing Iowa State. They're already maybe playing one of these tournaments, whatever. They like these games to get their other guys in the games, get them experience. They don't. I think selfishly they want the wins, the coaching wins. That all helps towards your bonuses. I'm not saying that's his motivation, but there is something to that. You don't want to be 5-6 in conference play.
The net too. I mean, it rewards you to beat a team by 25.
True. Absolutely. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, blow a quad 4 team out, but it's not something the fans want to see. And so one of the things that I'm still working on a story. So it's not out yet, obviously, but probably, in some time it'll be out. And one of the things that, I FOIA'd was the ticket scans, like how many people are actually showing up. And there was a recent Big Ten game, Chris, where Iowa had fewer than 3,000 ticket scans, fewer than 3,000 out of a 15,000 seat arena. So it was 19% full. Like, the listed attendance was probably 2.5 times that. But so that's kind of the apathy we're talking about. And so Beth Goetz, to get back to your question, she understands this. She's really sharp. For those that are curious, I mean, she's a businesswoman. She's also very proactive. We saw that with how she dealt with the Brian Ferentz issue. She didn't let it linger like it did the previous year under the previous regime, and where it was just sort of like, oh, we're just going to let time pass and do nothing, and then he's back. And it was something that was affecting their business, like it was creating negativity around Iowa football every week. And that's not something that, as a CEO of a business, you don't want people talking bad about your company weeks and weeks and weeks on end. And especially if you're actually winning, winning some games.
Iowa will go 10-2 in football and everybody's mad.
Yeah. Because of the offensive coordinator. And so you give her credit now. You look back on that and say, and it wasn't just Beth Goetz, it was Barbara Wilson. And a lot of university leadership involved with that too. So, but she, what's the Few Good Men, the guy that executes the code red, you know what I mean? Like, maybe Barbara Wilson was Jack Nicholson, but
you can't handle the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Kiefer Sutherland was,
that's a
Beth Goetz,
really good parallel.
Yeah.
Because I mean, Iowa basketball, I wouldn't say is like going the equivalent of going 10-2 and going to, New Year's Day bowl games or whatever the equivalent is. I don't know. But Fran has been pretty successful. Like, this is what's hard about college basketball, too. It's like you could have a really good year. Let's say Iowa State right now. Let's say they get upset in a 15-2 game in the first round of the NCAA. Everybody would just remember the year as trash.
Right. Yeah.
For the most part. Right. So that's what's interesting. Like, Fran has had good teams.
Yeah.
He's had national players of the year, but they haven't done enough in March to give, because even when they have anything positive happen, it's like, well, the defense is going to suck and let them down probably in the next 2 weeks, or, like, what's the best that could happen here? Like that, there's always, and that was kind of how Iowa football was, where it was like, yeah, we went 10-2, but then we're going to play Stanford and get completely blown out because we don't have the firepower to go to that next level. And fans always want what's next. Mm-hmm. And Matt Campbell's about to experience this at Iowa State, I think. Like, he's about to live in Kirk Ferentz's world of going 8-4, 9-3, and then all of a sudden it's like, no, damn it, we need to go to the playoff. Mm-hmm. And then you get into this like cycle, right? And you've seen this cycle, and I'm getting old enough in my career where I'm starting to see it go over and over again. And that, again, it just fascinates me about Fran McCaffery, because by every measure, he's been a successful coach at Iowa, other than the NCAA tournament.
Right.
And the attendance. And that's like this whole other trickle down thing.
Yeah, and there's, as I said, Beth Goetz is a businesswoman, first and foremost. She's the CEO of a big business. I mean, $173 million business. And if one part of your business isn't performing, I mean, they're losing a lot. Basketball, you end up on the balance sheet because of the NCAA tournament payout or whatever. But like, they went down about 600,000 in revenue year over year just from 23 to 24, and it's going to go down further this year because there's fewer fans in attendance.
That's fascinating.
And so, how long do you let that go? I mean, it's 600,000 may not seem like a lot out of a $173 million budget, but just think of all what if you could go up, 600,000 instead of down 600,000 or more. I mean,
especially in today's world with all the transition and they have a lot of debt too, right?
Yeah. I mean, Iowa's got a lot of, they got to pay the university back for the loan for COVID. They've got facilities. I mean, a lot of programs have facilities debt. That's not like that big a deal, but
yeah.
But
I was thinking more of the COVID stuff.
Like they got like 15 years or something to pay it off. So it's not the end of the world. Fran's buyout as of April 1st would be $4.2 million.
That's manageable.
They could pay that over 3 years. So it's 1.4 per year. So it's not as much. That part isn't totally about the money. Now, if you had to buy out another coach, it's starting to get to be about the money.
Good point.
But then you got to pay the new coach. So there's a lot. And there's no guarantee the new coach is going to put people in the arena.
So you just led me into this. Was my biggest question that I had for you is in this new era, which we don't really exactly still know. There was news from the Department of Education yesterday on Title IX, all this stuff. We're just going to assume $20.5 million, $22 million, whatever. You got to split the money among these whatever programs these athletic departments are going to decide. It's going to be different everywhere. My question is, how much should you invest in Iowa basketball right now? Just from a pure business standpoint, because football, and some fans heard me bring this up to Hassel, and I didn't mean it the way it came off. I'm not saying you let Iowa basketball die. That is not what I'm saying here. I'm saying, what would the investment be to make them really get to the point where people are happy? I don't know, right? Like, what would are you trying to be Michigan State? Are you trying to be, or what you are, where you're just kind of regularly going to NCAA tournaments?
Right.
And that to me gets into a huge conversation, because I do think if you're gonna talk to a lot of these coaches that Iowa fans want about replacing Fran McCaffery, if you make that choice, the NIL thing is going to be a huge part of any coach going anywhere going forward. That's as important as what you're going to pay them going forward.
Yeah.
What do you think Iowa does? They're in a tricky spot because of their women's program.
Yeah.
Because of their wrestling program. Mm-hmm. Iowa is in a difficult spot, I think, with men's basketball, based on what the fans have told you, that they don't really care that much. They're not going to the games. Maybe they care, but they're not showing up.
Mm-hmm.
Not like they do for wrestling, not like they do for women's basketball, not like they do for football. I'm not saying you punt on men's basketball, but if we can keep Fran McCaffery for another year, and we're probably going to we got a good recruiting class coming in. Hopefully we can keep our players and be on the bubble next year and maybe get to the NCAA tournament. That's where, to me, this conversation gets very tricky, and it's not as easy as just, fire him. I just don't think it's that simple.
Yeah. First of all, Scott Dochterman and we talked about this for probably 10, 15 minutes, not basketball specifically, but about this Department of Ed situation.
Oh, you guys did on today's show?
Awesome. About 15 minutes toward the end.
Okay.
But we didn't get as much into men's basketball, so it's a good question. But let's, Scott, here, for those that don't listen to Legends and Listeners, Scott, covers the Big Ten for the Athletic. And so he has a real good feel on all this stuff. You just think about all the other decisions that other schools have, like Nebraska volleyball, Minnesota ice hockey,
yeah,
Indiana basketball, Maryland basketball. What does Michigan State do? Because they're a big basketball program, obviously. Purdue probably going to spend more on basketball than Iowa will, for example. It's just you go across the board. Certain programs are going to pay more for football, and certain are going to pay more for basketball. You got to think in Indiana, for example, is going to pay for basketball. It's just different, and then these other sports, like you said, what do you allocate to them? So let's say, it's supposed to be $20.5 million. The good news, if you're an Iowa fan, is Beth Goetz says they're going to max out. So they're going to pay the full 20.5, assuming everything goes through. Let's say all the other, I don't even know what it's going to be, but let's say all the other sports combined gets $1.5 million. Maybe that's too much, but let's say all like baseball, track, I don't think they're going to give those athletes nothing. Maybe they will. I don't.
I would just give them their scholarship, but that's just me.
I mean, I think that's probably
fair.
Yeah. Okay. But let's just say for this point of argument that there's $19 million available.
Absolutely.
Okay. That's kind of what I'm saying.
Absolutely.
Let's say there's $19 million available. Well, every SEC program, every Big Ten program that cares about football is going to go at least $14 million in football. So I'd say probably Iowa's not going to go below that. So I would say probably you're talking 14 in football, because you got to play the market. You can't punt football, and Iowa won't. I mean, it is still a football school, I think. So then you have $5 million left to divvy up between wrestling, men's basketball, women's basketball. What do you do? Like it's tough,
hard,
because you have to keep the women's going. For me, you've actually got really good NIL outside of, this is just me. You've got really good NIL outside of revenue sharing going already. I think you rely on that for wrestling. Maybe not fully, but quite a bit.
Don't you think most wrestling programs will have to do that?
Yeah. I mean,
even like Penn State, Iowa State, like the ones
what's
that
Penn State going to do?
They got to have their own wrestling collective, and those athletes opt out of the scholarship, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to. I mean, I don't know if it's like you give them zero, but
if you're Iowa and you say, okay, wrestling, we'll give you $750,000.
Yeah, right. That's kind of what I'm saying. Like
that's not enough to compete with Penn State with whatever they're going to do.
Yeah. So it's a tough decision.
Yeah, it's hard.
So then how much do you give to men's basketball? Let's say
Indiana.
And then
you got to think like what Creighton and like these schools that don't have football.
Right.
That's my point on this basketball hire. It's not as easy as just fire Fran, because you have to be able to get somebody else. And to get a really good, like let's just say Darren DeVries, for example. I mean, I don't know what the NIL situation is like there, but I'm guessing that they're in a better spot with men's basketball than Iowa will be.
Maybe. I don't know if they're going to max out though. $20.5 million. I don't know enough about their finances.
I don't know.
So.
But he'll ask that question, and that's my whole deal. And that's where it's like, where are they going to be at as far as investment to basketball goes?
Yeah, and
it's not as easy as just we're going to bring in the next Steve Alford because he, has a connection here and he's going to take the job. Like there's so much more involved now.
Yeah, I think, and you don't have to. You can approach it different ways. You could say we're going to give $2 million to men's basketball. Let's say Michigan State's doing $4 million, whatever. But maybe Iowa just has to win with less and just go pay 2 guys, and then just get a bunch of complimentary pieces, something like that. You don't have to pay everybody $400,000 or whatever. I mean, maybe you pay 2 guys $1 million a piece, like a Keegan Murray and whoever else, type, so you don't have to like, I feel like it's a little bit different in football because you got to get a lot of guys. Like you can't mess around there. And then women's basketball. I mean, that for me right now, like, and I think I speak for the Iowa fan base. You cannot just say we're going to try to get by on that. You're in the mix right now with the number 1 recruit in the class of 2026. Like,
that's insane.
You can't just walk away from that momentum that's been created by your program. So I think you have to, and Beth said that in our interview, for those that want to listen to it, she said, we have to be realistic. Like we're in the mix for top 20 kids nationally. Like we're, when we're budgeting what we're going to do, like that's a factor, you know?
Absolutely.
So, and it should be, because to get those women, you're going to, especially in women's basketball, like top 20 recruits are big time. Like, you know, they're going to be good almost always. You look at women's recruiting rankings, like the top 10, like they almost always come through. Like, it's rare they don't.
And I would also make the argument, like with true name, image, and likeness too, that the women's game holds greater value because there's just more stability. Like, they don't transfer as much. They stay for 4 years, right? Like, they bring your university more value when it comes to that as well. You could sell them, right? Like, I mean, that's part of what this is. Like, I can go to Fairway and say Audie Crooks, or, like these women, they don't just hop around. No, there is transferring in the women's game, but I mean, I would argue that, like, Lucy Olson probably has more NIL value than Peyton Samford, maybe. Yeah. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Just because of the profile that they carry.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to think about that going forward, because I believe women's basketball is not going away. Like, this isn't like, oh, Caitlin and Angel Reese, they're gone now. Like, get ready. Like, you have an opportunity to kind of be what Iowa wrestling has been, potentially. I mean, that's a massive statement considering all the national championships they've won. But as far as a brand goes, because of what Caitlin and that team gave you, I'm completely with you. Just makes it very complicated. I think I'm envious that you get to cover this, and I'm not rooting for like firings or whatever. I think it's a really interesting crossroads where they are at.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask you a question, because you've called women's basketball games for Iowa State, so you have a good feel about all this too. A friend of mine, I've been interviewing, texting a lot of people about McCaffery and stuff. Like, what do you think? What do you think? Pro McCaffery, negative? It's all over the map. One friend had something interesting to say. He was referring to something Greg Popovich said about how the men's game now is just basically NBA, and now in the college game too, in some ways. It basically boils down to who's hot from three, on any given night. Whereas the women's game, you can win in a lot of different ways in the women's game. And so I think that also, it's something nobody's really talking about, I don't think. And then I just got thinking about it after my friend's text, and I was like, you know what? Like, if there's a good women's game on, like, I'm going to flip it on. If there's a good men's game on, like, personally, me, like, I'm not really flipping it on. Like, I'm just not as interested anymore. Like I used to be as when I was younger.
I've said that for 10 years. Because
drawing
up a play matters a lot more in the women's game.
Yeah, right.
Like when I called those games, like I know they had the data somewhere, but Bill Finley, to this day, when they drop an out of bounds play out of a timeout, it's an insane percentage.
Yeah.
Like it's an insane percentage. The hit.
Isn't that fun though? Like,
yeah, I love
what's he going to run,
Yeah. I love that. I also think too with the men's game, I don't know if y'all have seen this on the eastern side of the state as much, but I've definitely seen it in the Big 12 where this Iowa State team doesn't really work with, well, it kind of does. But it's kind of like, how old and big can we get? In the where I felt like and I think I prefer it now to 10, 15 years ago when it was all about the one and dones, like how many McDonald's All-American, and like I didn't really we saw Scott Drew have a lot of those players, and it's just they usually flamed out because they didn't play like a team, and it just, those guys generally weren't ready. Well, now, like, I feel like at least in the Big 12, it's just how gross can we make the games? Like, how physical can we be before they start calling fouls?
Yeah.
It's kind of fun. Like, it's way more fun this year because Iowa State has, like, skill guys. But those first 2 years of the Otzelberger era was just, like, pulling teeth, man. Like, it was – I joked with him one time. I told him, I'm like, you guys are like Iowa football.
Right.
I mean, you're just shortening the game. You're just – you're punting when you know, punting to win. Like, that's what it felt like for a while. Where the women's game with they're shooting from half court, you know, like everything Caitlin did. I think the Steph Curry effect. Like, I'm with you. I love the women's game. I always have. I respect it, and it's more of a you're rewarded for your skill and not like just the size of your body and your athleticism. if that makes sense. I don't know.
No, it's I think we're just seeing that on some scale with Iowa too. I mean, obviously Caitlin was a huge factor, but it's just, I mean, the games are more fun. I mean, they are winning probably more than the men. But to your earlier point, I know you want to get to NASCAR here, but Fran's averaged 21 wins over the last 12 years. Like that's not a small achievement, even with the lousy non-conference schedules. And then how would we feel if another person asked me this, and it's actually in my article, but how would Iowa fans feel if Iowa took Tennessee to overtime in the 2019 round of 32. Okay. Tennessee was a 2 seed. Iowa was a 10 seed. I don't know if you remember this, but they rallied from 25 down, forced overtime against Tennessee, lost in overtime. But if Iowa had won that game, it's a 5-minute period. If they had just won that overtime period, they would have gone to a Sweet 16. What would we be in the same boat as some of these other coaches? Would we be like, they can't fire him? Like, he's got 11 upper half Big Ten finishes in the last 12 years. And they've been,
and the COVID year too, that the tournament got canceled.
Right. So he got robbed of another NCAA tournament team that year. And that was Garza's junior year. They were pretty good that year. They would have been a 5 seed probably in the Big Ten.
They had a shot to go to the Sweet 16.
Yeah.
Like a realistic shot.
Yeah. And they had, I actually liked their team quite a bit that year. But anyway, they had Wieskamp, Garza. So anyway, I think the answer is yes, people would feel differently because, Chris, I think Iowa basketball has gotten to the point, and this is what Beth Goetz has to wrestle with, is that they've gotten to the point where fans don't even want to get into the regular season because they know they're going to be disappointed, even if they do something. They're like, you can go on a winning streak. Oh, great. Like, how are we going to go out in the tournament? It's like you can't enjoy it. It's maybe unfair in some ways, but it also is fair. It's a business, like you still got to produce at some point. And, it's a tough decision for her because it's not like it's just obvious to me.
As an outsider looking in, I have 2 critiques of Fran that I would lob. One is the overall, I wish that he would have done more of what he did last night earlier. Just show the human side. And I know he has to you people who are there daily. We just don't see that very often. The likability it's really important. It's great when you're going to Final Fours and like nobody cares if Tom Izzo's a jerk or whatever. But when you don't have that success, you gotta give. In this state, in my opinion, you have to give more when it comes to that.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing for me, that's because this is all about winning. Like, let's be honest, is I haven't seen them try anything new. I felt like they were fighting the portal forever. The type of player they recruit is very similar year in, year out. Like the teams just look at like their KenPom profile. They're almost the exact same every year. So it does feel like, I think if you're an Iowa fan, and just me as like an observer of this, where it's just like, well, what are the chances if we keep this guy, he's going to change anything up in the next 2 years anyways? He's probably not. And That's where I think she's probably going to have to land.
It's tough, Yeah. He'll be 66 in May. I think one other narrative that I feel like is out there that is not really, I think it's naive, is that, maybe he'll just retire after this year and go watch his son Jack. He's going to be a freshman at Butler. Connor coaches at Butler. His future daughter-in-law plays for the Fever. Like maybe he wants to just go be in Indianapolis. Well, that may have worked like 25 years ago when coaches made like, $700,000 a year. Like he's not going to walk away from. He's due $11+ million over the next 3 years. I think it's 11. It's around 11 because you have to factor in the last 3 months of this year if they were to fire him, like say April 1st. Like
he's going to have grandkids someday. They're going to have like, this is generational money. I wouldn't give a dime if I.
So why? Yeah. So he's going to walk. Like he loves coaching. Mm-hmm. Like he could probably get on one of his. use some of his private jet miles and, go over to Indianapolis whenever. Heck, I was in Indiana half the time.
We need to get some
Big
of them
Ten.
for Iowa everywhere.
So anyway, I feel like that's kind of a narrative that sort of just needs. I mean, maybe he'll be the most magnanimous person and just say, "Hey, I want to retire and walk away, and you guys keep your money." And
I don't sound like Fran.
That's silly. So he doesn't. It's in his contract. He deserves to get bought out if they really want to make a move. So I feel like
I agree with you.
So, don't fall for that. Is what I'm saying. Maybe he will, but I don't. Why would? I mean, same with Ferentz. People ask, why is this Ferentz's life? Dude, he's making $7 million a year, for the next 4 or 5 years. You think he's gonna? And he loves doing it. So,
most of these
that's
guys
a lot to walk away from.
Yeah, most of it's let's live in reality, people. We're not just gonna leave $4 million on the table for our kids and their kids and their kids down. It's a big deal. All right. The real reason you're coming on here. Okay. No, that's good. Did I leave anything on the, I think I got I wanted to get to know Goetz a little bit more. I'm going to go and listen to your podcast with her. I somehow have missed that. And I'll tweet that out too on there so people can have an easy place to find it.
Okay.
We'll keep an eye on it. I think it's a really, this is, again, just my take is, Chad, I just think it's bigger than fire the coach. There's so much more. When I talk to coaches right now, especially right now in the world of basketball, it is all about NIL money. That's all they care about. And there's weird jobs out there that have a huge advantage over these old traditional powers or whatever. I heard a story about what North Carolina men's basketball is getting for NIL going forward, and it would blow your mind how low they are going into the future compared to a program like Clemson. Is what somebody told me the other day. So it's just, we have to wire ourselves as fans and media to think differently than we did 10 years ago when it comes to this stuff. I guess that would be my closing argument.
Good. Yeah. Love it.
All right. I would like to talk about our NASCAR season coming up. Chad and I are both in. I promise, Chad, more people are going to be into this than you think. We got a big we live in Iowa, baby. We live in Iowa. Chad is the greatest NASCAR, fantasy NASCAR commissioner in history. We do this every year together. I'll start it with this, though. I don't really like the Daytona 500. Is that a hot take? Because here's what I don't like about it. All these people are going to tune in because it's the Daytona 500. And it's going to take 3 hours to run the last 50 laps because of a bunch of wrecks. And they're going to be like, how do you watch this shit? It's wrecking, it's going in circles. And I'm like, it's not the sport. This is not the sport that I love. It's great. I'll watch it. I'll be into it. I'll be cheering for my guys that are out there. But I just I hate what the Daytona 500 has become. How do you like that to start the conversation?
Yeah, there's a lot to be said about that for sure. I think the pure racing fans, like yourself, would rather see, like a Homestead or
let's go to Martinsville.
I mean, Homestead puts on a great show.
Yeah,
I mean, that and it's that's in Florida. Just do that. They could run a Homestead 6 times a year. I wouldn't get tired of it.
No doubt.
So yeah, it's not indicative necessarily of who's going to be good this year. It's more of a lottery. One of my so I used to be the motorsports editor at USA Today. For those who don't know,
yeah.
One of my writers was a great writer. Nate Ryan was his name, and he put the phrase "high speed lottery" in one of his stories, and I was like, "That's perfect." It's a high speed lottery. There's some skill obviously to getting to the front, but you can get taken out for no reason. So yeah, if you're new to watching the Daytona 500, it's not indicative of the whole NASCAR season, but at the same time, you have no idea what you're going to see. And I think that is one piece of the allure. You don't have any idea. Jimmy Johnson, could come out and win this. You never know. Sometimes you get the weirdest winners in this thing.
Well, and it's also like my guy, friend of the program, Ricky Stenhouse. He's this iconic, super speedway driver, and then he'll just disappear.
Yeah.
Until they get to Talladega. And then he's
some of these guys, this is their only chance to win.
Yeah, he's running 25th. all the time, and then I don't know.
Is there any other sport like that where like the worst driver can win the biggest event?
I was thinking about that.
I guess the NCAA tournament.
That was the only thing I could think of is like George Mason getting to the Final Four.
Right. Yeah. Trevor
but they're
Bayne,
probably
George
not
Mason.
ever going to win it, right? Like,
right.
What's the biggest upset in the NCAA tournament? Like to win? Like, what's the highest seed that's ever won that tournament? Aiden, look that up for us if you don't mind.
Was it UConn that one year when they went from like?
They beat Iowa State in Madison Square Garden that year.
Did they? Yeah, they weren't they like a 7 seed maybe?
That was the Niang broken foot team.
Oh yeah, okay. 7 seed, yeah, that's right.
Kimball Walker.
I think it was, wasn't
Yeah.
it? Or was it? It didn't. Yeah, UConn like won the Big East tournament. Had to win the Big East tournament, I think, to get in.
Yeah,
right?
and they had to like start playing on like Wednesday that week too. Like, and they just kept winning.
Mm-hmm.
As far as this year goes,
how could I forget that, Aiden? 8 seed Villanova in '85. That was historic. Was historic. They shot like 22 for 34 in the game. Like it was weird. It was like they shot like 67%.
They beat Georgetown, right?
Yeah.
That was a huge deal for the big Dana O'Neill's book on the Big East. Have you read that one?
No.
Should read that one. That should be a good off-season read for you. Really fast.
Yeah,
like
I've watched the documentary on ESPN. But.
Yeah, it's good. The what I like about it is it's like the politics behind building that conference, and they were thinking about like TV contracts and stuff before it was really a thing. They were really brilliant people who built that league, but nonetheless.
Yeah. By the way, how dumb is it in hindsight that Jim Delaney added Rutgers? Now in the streaming world, we need those TV sets in New York.
Yeah.
Yeah. Dang. Like they're a big money loser. Like that's just.
And you can't, from what I understand too, it's really difficult legally to just kick a team out of a league.
Yeah. So
I've asked about that, like, because I think that relegation is what will happen next. Like, I truly do. I
hope so.
I think the next thing will be Ohio State, Georgia being like, why are we giving Vanderbilt and Indiana all this money? Like, at some point, I think we'll get to that. Because you can't.
And that could hurt Iowa.
There's nobody else you can add, is my point, that will add value because the leagues are too big.
Notre Dame.
Other than Notre Dame.
Yeah.
But if you're Notre Dame, why would you leave at this point?
At this point, they've got their AD made the best deal in the world because they get a home game now.
It's amazing.
Hey, we won't be eligible for a bye.
Yeah, and the whole thing's rigged anyway, so they're going to put Notre Dame in the playoff every year because they want the TV ratings.
Yeah, so they get they could go 12-0, whatever. They don't have to play a conference championship game.
Yeah,
and then they get a home game.
And now,
and then they get to keep all the money.
They're rigging that deal up with the ACC where they're going to play like Florida State and Clemson every year. So they're going to have like actual good games so they'll have a decent schedule.
And then they get their own payout. Didn't they get to keep like all $20 million this year instead of because they don't have to share it with anyone? Yeah, because for every game you win in the playoff, you get $5 million. Yeah, and they got to keep the whole damn thing. Yeah. Anyway, NASCAR.
We just keep bouncing around.
Indiana's
I'm telling you, Chad,
state.
We could do a show together. I've always thought this. Okay, is Kyle Larson listen, like this guy, very confusing to my daughter. You'd love this. She's 5 now. Huge racing fan. Okay. Loves it.
Not surprised.
She's nuts, man. Like she's learning all the drivers. She knows their paint schemes. She's very confused that Kyle Larson is on the TV every night in a different type of car. She doesn't understand. I thought he raced against Chase Elliott. No, he's in a sprint car tonight.
A late model.
All right. Where is he the odds-on favorite to win the championship this year? Because he probably weird deal last year how he doesn't even make the championship 4. I don't know if I like that. I would obviously put him. I think my guy Chase Elliott has got a shot. I think that he's had a really weird last couple of years. He had that skiing accident. The knock on him is always like, how much does he actually want to be there? Because he's so boring. He doesn't ever show much enthusiasm. I think my guy Christopher Bell, I would put in the mix. I think that where are you at? Give me a couple picks. Who you like to bring it home this year?
For the championship, yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
it is overall.
I mean, obviously, you start with Kyle Larson just because. Oh, we got odds here.
There we go.
And then
best bet is Chase Elliott. I'll give you that right now. Plus,
where's he down there?
Plus 1,100 to win the championship.
Yeah, and he's like, one of those popular public things too. So, I mean, the odds makers have it right because Christopher Bell is the best driver in JGR, and you have to look at who's good on all kinds of tracks because you need to be good on all kinds of different tracks to win. And that's one of the reasons Ryan Blaney always seems like he's there because he's good at road courses, he's good at super speedways, he's good at short tracks, and he's good at the 1.5 milers. And so, he's sneaky. Like everyone, he wins championships and then people forget about him. It's kind of strange. But your guy, Chris, I'm with you on Chase Elliott. He had the best average finish of any driver last year.
Yep,
the whole season, 11.7. So he was there, but he was like, he just wasn't getting the wins.
He's just like his dad was, though. He just doesn't win enough,
yeah.
So he doesn't get the headlines and stuff. But he's just top 10 every week.
Yeah,
he would probably be the favorite if it was the old championship, right?
I'd still maybe go Kyle Larson, but Kyle does have some DNF problems sometimes. So yeah, maybe I got Chase Elliott with the 6th with the turnaround in our fantasy draft. I can't believe he slipped to 6.
If you had my pick at pick number 5, so this is our fantasy league, would you have taken Blaney?
Yeah,
I would have. So I made the right pick.
I think so. Yeah, I had Blaney higher actually. So yeah, we had that. We kind of one guy kind of took a little bit of a gamble early with Logano. That was a reach, and so that pushed everyone down. So I was real happy to get Elliott and Reddick. Tyler Reddick's my other one.
Who's the easiest driver for you to root against?
Ooh,
in NASCAR. I have 2 guys.
Go, you start.
Well, it's Kyle Busch.
Okay. See, I kind of like him.
Hamlin used to be in this for me, but I kind of respect him now. Like the disruptor in me kind of appreciates what Hamlin and Michael Jordan are doing. Now, I don't know enough about it to like have a hot opinion on this, but like I kind of respect it because they're trying to change the game. I still think that Austin Dillon is the most dislikable. I can't stand him. So I'm watching qualifying last night, and Ty Dillon's up there, and I'm like, that kid got screwed. Just because of birth order, he's over there grinding for colleague racing, you know? While his older brother is wearing his fancy-ass cowboy hat with his supermodel girlfriend, Grandpa's, I can't stand... And I'm a Chase Elliott fan, so my driver was born with a silver spoon too, okay? I get it. But this is going to be a thing coming up as well. You got Bush's kid, you've got Larson's kid, you got all these silver spoon kids coming up. You got Harvick's kid.
Yeah.
This Austin Dillon, when he did that crap last year at Richmond, and then he just lied about it and was like, oh, I don't know. He is nails on a chalkboard, and it kills me that he drives the Intimidator's car.
Yeah,
it just kills me that he's driving Earnhardt's car.
Yeah.
Because I have a diecast problem, right? I just buy all these diecasts. I would be buying the number 3s to keep up with my uncle's collection because he has all the 3s and I inherited them. I can't do it. I cannot put any sort of financial gain in Austin Dillon's pocket.
So for whatever reason, I root against Joey Logano. I just feel like he's kind of like, and then he'll get pissed if somebody does something, anyway, I feel like he's sort of a little bit two-faced. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know NASCAR like I used to, the personalities, but I just, something about him just rubs me the wrong way. And so I've always kind of rooted against him. And yet on the flip side, I have one of my favorite drivers of all time, is Brad Keselowski. Just the way he treats the media, I think that's part of it.
Oh yeah, we're all homers for the guys who are nice.
Yeah,
to the media.
I mean, he's just he's more real. You watch interviews with him, it's just he's authentic, and it feels like Logano's a little bit more fake or whatever. And
that's the problem I have with Chase Elliott. because it's like I am rooting for him only because I was born wearing a number 9 onesie. Okay. Like it was ingrained into my body. We are Awesome Bill from Dawsonville. I took my freaking family to Dawsonville, Georgia on vacation this last summer, Chad. Did you know that?
Did you go to that bar?
Oh, yeah. We had lunch at the pool hall.
Okay.
Met the old man who owns
Really?
it. Oh, yeah. Gordon.
Oh, I thought you meant Bill.
No,
Bill.
I wish. I would have FaceTimed you. Chad, I got Bill Elliott here.
Remember that time we did a selfie with Danica Patrick at Dingus?
And Ricky Stenhouse is in it too, isn't he? And
I think
Boyer
it was Boyer. It was
yeah.
Clint Boyer, yeah.
We were at Dingus.
You and Clint Boyer and Danica.
True story. We're sitting at Dingus because you don't go in until the races start.
Like the C main at earliest. Yeah.
Chad and I have been at Dingus for a couple hours, and this is on like a Wednesday night at Knoxville. Danica Patrick and Clint Boyer and Ricky was there. That was when she was dating Ricky Stenhouse. And I'm not kidding. It's Chad and I and like those three are like sitting. We're like the only people still there because Chad and I are just waiting around. You know, because you can watch the race at the bar. Like they got it on Dirt Vision there. And she was lovely to us. She was a very nice lady to us. Yeah.
And the funny part was, so I no longer drink, but at that time I had a little bit to drink. And so I like put up my phone to do the selfie and she grabs it from me because, what a savvy move, you know, by somebody who's concerned about it. She doesn't want me to take a bad picture of her. Yeah. Like she wants if I'm going to tweet it out or whatever. And I'm sure I did. It was, whatever year that was, 2014.
We're getting old.
Yeah. And so she took my phone from me like before I could take it and took the picture and then handed me the phone back. So
she was great. And Boyer was kind of a dick to me that night. Was he? Yeah, it was really disappointing because he's always been one of my favorites. He was kind of an asshole.
Well, now I don't like him.
Well, I'm sure that I'm probably 18 beers deep at this point. Like, let's be honest. So I was probably annoying to him. Like, right? Like,
yeah, I'm sure we were pretty annoying.
We have to be able to look ourselves in the mirror and be like, we were the jackasses that aren't in it. They probably went out there because they thought that they were completely alone. Hey, Clint, love what you done for dirt racing, man. You know, like I'm sure that he was just rolling his eyes.
Yeah, that was fun times. I've had a lot of fun times at Knoxville with you.
So the Ricky Stenhouse jacking Kyle Busch one of the great moments in NASCAR history last year at the All-Star race?
Oh God! Yeah, didn't Ricky's dad, getting involved too?
Yeah, he got suspended. He got banned from trackside.
Oh yeah, NASCAR can be a great sport. I wish there should be more villains though. Kyle's like the last villain. I guess Denny's become a villain now, but. It is kind of cool. And like when you go to the Knoxville track, like Donnie Schatz would win all the time. So then he started getting booed. It just depends, you know, the villains change.
Remember the night when we were out on the backstretch when Tony Stewart,
killed
that guy. I believe accidentally killed that guy, right?
Kevin Ward Jr. I was looking this up the other day. Yeah.
And then I'll never forget, Andy covering it for the Register that night? Mm-hmm. Well, and you were the sports editor at the time. I believe.
I was. Yeah.
So you go into overdrive and you're like, oh my God, because Schatz wins.
Yeah.
And Schatz works for Tony Stewart. And I'll never forget Luke Meredith from the Associated Press texting me because he didn't know what the hell is going on. Because, he's not a racing guy. And so our guys being the media start asking Schatz about it in the presser, and all the people in the media center start booing the reporters.
Yeah, because they let fans into the press conference. It's like the craziest thing. It's like these wood panel walls. Yeah, it's cool. Knoxville is so cool. It's just they've got taps of beer for the media to just. I mean, obviously I didn't do that ever, but they just have a beer tap in the media room.
They did that at Big 12 tournament last year.
Really?
They brought
so beer weird.
To it was old school, yeah.
Wow, that is old school.
Yeah, they had
ashtrays too.
No, so I'll never forget. You get done, and they had a legitimate bar, just sitting there in the media room, and you could just go up and take what. I was shocked. I'm like, this is what Randy Peterson has been telling me about forever, and it's coming to life.
Oh man, that's
Did they
funny.
really used to like have taps? Like
At
kegs?
Knoxville?
No, in press boxes back.
Oh,
in the
I don't
day.
know about that. I bet they did. That predates me, but I
Because
think
those
they
guys
did.
would smoke up there.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. Yeah, that does predate me just a little. I am old, but I'm not that old.
All right. Well, there you go. There's your NASCAR preview.
Yeah, it wasn't much of a preview. It was more of a
We like the guys. We like the guys at the top of the odds. I tell you, I think Elliott is your best value bet.
Elliott's a good value bet because he could make the Final Four.
I'm gonna do some of these tonight before the
Yeah.
duels is my plan. I think I might put a unit on Blaney because I just feel like he was even probably the most well-rounded guy last year too, and his teammate clearly like Logano like just dominates that final race if he ever gets in it, so that helps.
Penske's good. Yeah, Penske's good at Phoenix. A little dark horse this year is Keselowski because he's reunited with his crew chief.
What about
He
our
went
guy Busher?
Well, yeah, he's on my fantasy team, so I love him. But yeah, I was going to
So
say was
pissed you got him.
so when Keselowski left Penske to go to RFK to start his kind of be part of that team, Roush Fenway Keselowski Racing, like they wouldn't let him take his crew chief with him. So, but now he's with him. So we'll see if that turned. I think that is a big deal. I mean, has to be.
And it's also I would fade Hamlin.
Yeah,
I mean, not to have
do.
Chris Gabehart is that's
he doesn't have FedEx anymore. Did you know that?
yeah. The whole thing feels like
He doesn't even have a sponsorship yet. Like it's wild.
I didn't want to take him, but I had
had
to
to.
in my position in the draft. I feel like he's due to, and he's I mean he's in court all the time. Like seriously, like it's
He's
got
got
a way.
back pain. Like he has bad back pain.
Yeah,
Like he barely can get in the car.
I would fade him, and I think Busher, in my opinion, I think he's one of the best 5, 6, 7 drivers. He's
good everywhere. Yeah, he's
Yeah.
good everywhere. Road course, super speedway. He almost won at Kansas last year. I mean, he's good at Darlington.
I think if you put like Busher in Alex Bowman's car, he could win the championship tomorrow.
Yeah, Busher's a stud, man. He is. I could talk about all these guys, but by the way, there's a team out there that if you're looking for dark horses this season, early in the season, Spire Motorsports. They got good funding. Michael McDowell's there now, so
He would be a good bet on the
McDowell,
500.
yeah, Hocevar and Haley. They're all
Aiden, pull up our Daytona 500 odds real quick. Chad and I are each going to give everybody a couple of picks here.
if you want early season dark horses, I think those look at
'Cause
Spire Racing.
McDowell's one of those guys who's like an elite super speedway guy.
McDowell is, yeah, for sure.
He's I like watching how these teams are kind of building themselves up too. Like Colleague and then like Spire.
Trackhouse
Like,
a little bit, yeah.
it feels like Jordan is helping like new blood get into the sport.
And he's kind of fighting the man, which I like.
See, that's why it's like, how do I hate Hamlin? Like that's
Yeah,
but he's such a
they're-
jerk.
yeah. he kind of is, but sort of like him too. But,
Yeah, like he's great for the sport. Like
Yeah.
I wish every guy. All right, zoom in on these odds here, Aiden. We're gonna give everybody a pick here for the Daytona 500, and I'll
like,
tweet.
and don't pick to win. Like
No.
pick. What you do is
These
you
are the
pick.
duels, Aiden. We need the real race.
Oh,
They're
okay.
probably not going to have the real race.
Yeah,
Aiden doesn't
okay.
even know what the duels
Look, man, you're talking to the wrong guy here.
So the what I've found in betting NASCAR, which I don't cover it anymore, is look for a guy like top 10 finish, because anybody can finish in the top 10. Pick a guy that's pretty good on restricted plate tracks, that's totally on a bad team or whatever. Maybe it is Justin Haley. Okay, there's my pick. Justin Haley, top 10 in the Daytona 500. He's good on super speedways. I bet he'll be like plus 300 or plus 400 to make the top 10.
Yeah,
Maybe worse.
Zane
Maybe
Smith.
worse. Zane Smith, yeah, that's a good one. Mm-hmm.
he was like top 5 in the 500 last year.
Yeah. Is he on a team though? Oh, he's on a team, right?
Yeah, he's
Okay.
he's Gilliland's teammate. He's-
Okay, yeah. Front row.
He's
Okay.
he's over at front row. Gilliland's a great pick. David
Gilliland, yeah.
David Gilliland, top 10. Probably get it for like
Todd.
plus
Todd
Gilliland.
Gilliland.
His dad was David.
Don't pick
Gilliland.
David. Don't go to your bookie and I want Dave Gilliland.
I bet this is how I like to bet NASCAR every week. One, I like to do the daily fantasy, head-to-head with some other guy from like wherever, where I go out and pick my roster. I'll do one of those for like $10, $20. I like to pick one favorite, like ish, to win. This is like on a general race, not necessarily the Daytona 500. And then I like to do what Chad's saying, top 10s. Like I usually look around even money top 10s when I can get them. It's like if I see like a Hendrick guy at plus 150, it's usually a pretty decent option depending on the track. And then I like the matchups.
Matchups is my favorite.
Yeah.
Because you can just watch that the whole thing. That's more fun to watch.
Correct. Know? If you're just trying to pick winners, you're going to lose more often than not.
Yeah, for sure. I like that.
Thanks, Chad. I know you're busy this time of year. I appreciate your time.
No problem. Absolutely, man. Enjoy the race.
Yeah, you too, buddy. Well, I'm sure we'll talk.
Yeah.
I'm gonna find his piece. He sent it to me. We'll tweet out that podcast that he did with Beth Goetz as well with the Register. That'll be good insight for anybody who wants more information on all this. Chad has a new episode of Legends and Listeners up with Doc as of this morning. So go check that out as well. Thanks, Aiden, for producing. Our friends at Steeple Ridge Bourbon for sponsoring the show each and every week. We'll be back next week. CW Pod here on Iowa Everywhere.